momentarily.
Well, the first thing is the review of minutes, of course, which we...
Sorry.
Which,
Is it, okay.
Review of minutes, but since we're in between, we're changing votes in the middle of the stream as far as our secretarial staff. So I guess we'll have to approve the minutes from May and July.
Thank you very much.
Our future meetings, the next one is July 18th. For some reason, my computer made a mistake and says that. August 22nd, September 19th. It's routinely the third Monday of the month. Okay, and once again, I think everybody was here. Commissioner Small's no longer with us, so we're down to our 8 commissioners. We've got room to grow if City Hall ever deigns to give us more commissioners. That would be my report.
Thank you, Jeff. Related to that, as I was pointing out to Chuck and to Kelvin, through general attrition, the panel of commissioners has become a whole lot less diverse and isn't really reflecting the communities that I think feel perhaps most targeted or most vulnerable in terms of interaction with the police. And I think it's important to point out that it wasn't an intention to have a predominantly Caucasian commission. It just, and that's what happened through attrition. So I think it's important that we reach out to the city and alert them of that. I don't think it was that, or I feel confident it was no one's intention, kind of is what happened. And when we go out into the community, I think it's important that we tell the folks who come to our meetings that we are conscious of that and that we're going to do something about that. I think that's all I have for now. Kelvin, you have a report?
I do. Let's see. Starting out with complaint status, we have 15 complaints that have come through the commission so far this year. That's a little less than the 20 we had this time last year. Our investigators have 39 open complaint investigations from 2014 to 2016. Internal Affairs has 300 citizens complaints so far this year in 2016. That's just a little bit down from 325 at this same time last year. In addition to those full investigations, we're auditing an additional 146 complaints of various types, which we will summarize in our upcoming annual report. I want to give you some case overviews where some of the more important cases we've been dealing with recently are. In terms of the Koshman case, as you know, we've had a consultant who's been looking at the details of that case and attempting to assist us in our review. Spoke with him about 2 weeks ago. He's getting close to wrapping up his review and will be presenting his findings to us pretty shortly. Staff and I are re-interviewing and collecting some additional information from several of Erica Koshman's friends, as well as planning to re-interview the medical examiner and the ME investigator who responded to the scene in that particular case. In terms of Ms. Shallick's case, we sent a formal response to Internal Affairs with a number of questions around the specific findings in that case. We should hear back from them pretty shortly and in detail on those questions. In terms of the Bernstein case, you have Joe's report before you here. I'm going to let him talk to you about the PBI hearing he attended on that case last week. Joe?
Okay. I attended the PBI hearing on the 18th, Thursday the 18th, and you had your command level Board of Inquiry to hear both sides and give due process. So you had your counselor for the FOP and the 2 subject officers present, and they didn't testify, but the advocate for the police department had several witnesses, including Ms. Bernstein, which is not it's not usual that the complainant is there through this part of the process, although they're certainly welcome to come and you know, they would like them to be there. But most times they don't testify. So it was really good on Elena's part that she gave her version. At least twice she got to speak, because they called her back. They had some questions and all. They had police witnesses, and you know, they gave their account.
Joe, can you just run through the facts really briefly?
Okay.
I mean, I know them, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, it ends up that the two charges now will be decided, having listened to both sides of the argument. And do I know which way it's going to go? No, I don't. You know, I heard both sides of it, but I really don't, because there's no independent witness. You know, we may get a partial on the verdict when it comes to this. They may rule sustain part of it and dismiss the other part. The part that they might dismiss is failure to cooperate with the department investigation. That's kind of hard to prove, because even though the IA investigator felt that this officer was not cooperating fully, the fact that he did answer the questions, even if he says, I don't recall, that's still considered cooperation. So, as far as the improper arrest, I feel that that's the strongest charge, because Ms. Bernstein registered .000 twice. So, enough said.
Yeah, I think the facts were she's a hairdresser. She was rear-ended by a police car
Yeah,
on
she was rear-ended.
Gerard Avenue.
Yeah.
And then he arrested her for DUI.
DUI.
And they take her back, and then 2-3 hours later, I guess they release her.
Yeah.
They didn't, you know.
They couldn't hold her because she registered a .000. You know, so, you know, there's a question about, of course, you have to challenge, and the advocate did challenge the validity of the arrest. And the officer that was really making the charges didn't do the paperwork. So it was held that he didn't actually make the arrest. Another officer came to the scene, he ends up making the arrest. Well, they charged both of them, because the officer, when he made the report, he should have got the facts. He should have investigated to find out, did you go up to the woman and smell her breath, and you know, was her eyes glassy? He was so unclear about, you know, her state at that time.
Her eyes might have been glassy because she was just rear-ended.
But you know what I mean in terms of how they make you get up. Another expert talked about what he would have done from accident investigation. He would have made the person get out the car and, you know, walk a line, or, you know, do certain things to indicate whether she was sober or not. And he did none of that. So he really was relying, they pretty much proved that he was relying on the testimony of the other officer, who's the one who was really making the charges, his partner. So
we hope to hear something in September?
we hope to hear something in September.
Joe, is that the norm now, a long gap, deliberations of the board, or is this like kind of unusual for this particular case that was done?
It's summertime and vacations, and any one of the participants can go on vacation and throws the schedule out of whack.
The deliberations, and again, I've been out of that
I
business
know.
now for a number of years, but we used to deliberate immediately following the hearing and render the decision, you know, within a half hour. No? Okay.
Well, I would say that sometimes they do that. The couple that I've been to, that were relatively, the facts were, you know, not really in contention. They ruled fairly quickly, but some, like this case, they do seem to take a while. But I suspect this does have to do with scheduling and so on.
it's already like 2 years old, right? I mean, it's,
Yeah,
because he was like off duty for a long time.
yeah, yeah, a lot of delays. A lot of delays.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another case that I'm going to be sending to the board involving Ms. Charmaine Humphreys. A lot of similar issues as with Ms. Shalleck's case, at least in terms of what's on the table here. This is a case where Ms. Humphreys was involved in an altercation with her ex-husband at her house. She actually fired a weapon in self-defense, she says, to keep him from further hurting her. Several officers responded. Her complaint is against 3 of the police officers and the detective who investigated the case. IA's conclusion in Ms. Humphrey's case actually exonerated the officers, and as you'll see in the information that we're going to present you, we feel that this contradicts both the physical evidence and the testimony of the officers in this case. There's a clear physical injury to Ms. Humphrey on her booking photo, which seems to be not dealt with among some of the other issues in that case. But we're going to send you the Internal Affairs case and our evaluation of that to deal with at our next meeting. This was a case that she had contacted us. This happened back in 2012. She did not pursue the IA case until the criminal charges were cleared up, but she had been in contact with us all along because she very much wanted to file a complaint in this matter. She did. We investigated the complaint along with Internal Affairs, and they reached a decision last year.
Is there any question as to whether her ex-husband was on the police force, like in the Kochman case?
No, in this instance, this person she had the altercation with was not a former police officer. That's one of her other. Her previous husband, I believe, was a former police officer.
Thank you.
So this been to Internal Affairs?
Yes, it has. Internal Affairs exonerated the 3 officers and the detective in this case. We felt that exoneration was not appropriate given both the physical evidence and the testimony of the officers, as you'll see as we send that out to you. Okay. In addition to those cases, we also are, we've been tasked with drafting a language access plan in accordance with the mayor's executive order and some of the various other laws that are out there. The first draft of that plan is due in July with a final version in 2016, and will obviously address how we intend to extend our services to folks who are limited English proficient and deaf and hard of hearing and other issues like that. So we'll be sending you a draft for that probably well in advance of the July meeting, actually, so we can get that finished up. It isn't that difficult, but it's going to take some work on our part to get that correct.
Are there some city agencies who developed this? I mean, it seems that there should be some common thread here.
There are, and in fact, the managing director's office has a blueprint that all of the agencies under MDO will use to create a plan. Also, our annual report, we're planning on finishing this up and presenting it at the September meeting. So we're going to have a final draft to you well in advance of that. So we'll be ready to actually present that in September.
The final draft, is that final like in final, or final like in the first round of final?
The final is in final from our end. Now, it may, I don't know what happens when I give it to you guys. You might have more changes you want to make, which is fine, but I'll make sure to give it to you well in advance of September so you can make those changes.
Thank you.
Likewise, with the release of the pedestrian stop data that just came out from the police department last month, we're working on creating a district neighborhood level map of those stops. So we can then use that in our meetings where we go out to districts and show people exactly what's happening with both pedestrian and vehicle stops at the district and neighborhood level. I think to make it a little bit more palatable than thinking about 80,000 stops around the city and such. We should be getting that, and Vivi will tell you more about our conversations with the law department about accessing that data, but as soon as we get that data, we should probably sometime later in the fall be able to put that out in a much more palatable form for folks to learn something from.
Now, when you say that you expect the data to be available to us by the fall, or and we'll be able to take that and turn it around fairly quickly for public consumption?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Thank you.
It actually should be available before the fall.
Good.
God willing.
In that case, we will. In terms of additional training for staff, we've submitted a request for 3 of us to attend the AELE Legal Aspects of Discipline and Internal Investigations training, which will be held in Las Vegas in October. This is the second of 3 seminars that we're going to be taking that supplements what we learned about use of force investigations back in April. That will lead the 3 of us to earn certified litigation specialists designations for non-attorneys. So that's something, again, to help up the knowledge level of the staff in terms of dealing with these issues. So we're looking forward to that very much. 3 of us have also been approved to attend the annual NAPOL Police Oversight Conference in Albuquerque in September.
Why do I feel like you just weren't? Has that been a year?
Oh, yeah, I was in, since I'm on the
You
board,
went
I
to
was in, right. I was at the planning meeting for the national conference in January, since I'm on the board. What we do is, in January, we go to the site where we're going to hold the annual conference and plan it in January, and then set it up during the year, and then we actually have it in September. So.
Let's hope it's not 115 degrees.
Well, the
in
balloon
Mexico.
festival will be going on, so we'll certainly be taking people up in balloons. That means you too. So, okay, in terms of the Police Community Oversight Board, which I'm on, and several other people, chaired by Dean Epps from Temple, we're going to be meeting with the administration officials in early July to discuss exactly where the city is going with both PAC, frankly, and that body, and seeing what the administration's plans are to either consolidate in some way or reconcile the issues between this body and the Police Community Oversight Board. So, and in connection with that, the Department of Justice study of shootings in the department will, like the consultant in that, will likely release its second interim report probably sometime in the early fall. They were at the Use of Force Review Board meeting and observed how that body makes decisions. As you know, I'm also a member of that board, and we should get some pretty interesting conclusions from the consultants to see how the city is doing there. Basically, the biggest thing on the table now is creating a way for the city to both do the criminal inquiry into a shooting simultaneously with the administrative investigation. So they're still trying to figure out exactly how that is supposed to work, but that's the biggest thing that's on the table now. The issues around the city being able to name officers who are involved in shootings within 3 days is still in a labor relations charge at the state level, as well as the legislation that one of our state legislatures put in play to prevent the city from doing that. Both of those things are going to be heard at the state level probably fairly soon. I know that the legislation is before the Senate Law and Government Committee at this time. There are a number of legislators, a couple of whom I've talked to, who are trying to make changes to that bill as it stands. So we'll have to see where that goes. Also met earlier this month, last week actually, with the members of the Open Society Institute's Baltimore office. Open Society Institute, I believe, is George Soros's group that provides grant money and support to a number of different entities. In this case, Baltimore's revamped Civilian Review Board. I met with their executive director, Keisha Brown. And I have to say, even though you often hear me complain about the lack of resources here in the city, Keisha Brown not only heads their Civilian Review Board, she's also heads up their Human Relations Commission and their EEOC office, and has jurisdiction not only over Baltimore City Police, but also the police at Morgan State University, Baltimore University, and something called the Watershed Police, and she doesn't even know what that is. So I guess I shouldn't complain too much. But it was very good to go down there and talk with her and kind of see what's going on in Baltimore with their review board. They have a very similar history and very similar structure to our board. They also have subpoena power. They also deal with both complaints and policy matters as well. Last Wednesday, right after going to Baltimore, I was up in New York at an event called Rainbow Crossing, which was sponsored by the CCRB, which is New York's Civilian Complaint Review Board, and that was at the LGBT Center up in Manhattan. Just a couple of days, obviously, after the Orlando tragedy. And we heard a lot from several different panels of speakers, activists, policy advocates, members of the gay officers, actually about what's going on between police and the LGBTQ community in New York. One of the striking things about that event was as we walked up to the center, there were two New York City officers with automatic rifles standing outside guarding the facility, which of course led to lots of conversation amongst everyone there about what that actually meant, just a couple of days after Orlando. And I thought it was a particularly enlightening event to hear, particularly from the community up there, about issues around collecting data in that community, some of the issues that come up as we try to collect data and better serve that community from an oversight perspective. So,
was that event scheduled in advance, or?
It was, yes. That was actually scheduled a couple of months before that. So it, as many things turned out to be, it was a timely event. And that is my report for tonight.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions of Kelvin? So, Phoebe, my request is that because we have the captain here to give his report, if we can review it around. So, do you want to introduce our guest, Kelvin?
Sure. This is the Special Victims Union, who has kindly agreed to talk to us tonight about the functioning of that unit. I know that he is newly commanding this particular unit, and really appreciate him coming out and talking to us tonight about how SVU works and what his plans are for going forward. Captain, thank you so much.
Thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for inviting me here to highlight our unit. As he said, I'm the brand new captain of the Special Victims Unit. I was assigned in March. So I'm going to give you all my months of experience in Special Victims. I'll give you a little background on myself. I've been around for a long time, 35 years in law enforcement. Most of my career I spent in Detective Bureau. I was 11 years a detective. I was a sergeant for years in Detective Bureau. I was a lieutenant in Detective Bureau. When I got promoted, they put me back in Detective Bureau. So I do know investigations. I'm new to Special Victims, but I am very familiar with investigations. So let me just quickly give you An overview of our unit. We have about 50 investigators assigned to the unit, made up of detectives and police officers, all investigators. We handle about 6,000 investigations a year. Those investigations consist of sexual assaults, child abuse, both physical and sexual, child porn, human trafficking, which we just initiated. We just are beginning to implement that now. We just got several new officers assigned to the unit. We received a grant from the federal government in conjunction with the Salvation Army. So we're just starting that, and we're excited about that, human trafficking. We handle all abductions, adult and child. We handle Megan's Law violations, as well as do Megan's Law compliance checks. We have crimes against the retired and elderly. We also handle that, and we handle sudden deaths of children. We are located in what is called the Philadelphia Safety Collaborative. And what that means is that under one roof, there's several different agencies, including us. We're co-located with Department of Human Services, PCA, Philadelphia Children's Alliance, ourselves, Special Victims Unit, a unit that we call the SARC, that stands for the Philadelphia Sexual Assault Response Center. Let me tell you a little bit about both. DHS obviously handles complaints. They refer us child abuse and neglect and stuff like that. They also refer us, and we many times do an investigation right alongside them. PCA, Philadelphia Children's Alliance, when children come there that are victims of sexual assault, for the most part, we do not interview them. That's done by a forensic interviewer employed by PCA, who's had special training on how to deal with children. We have a MOU with them, we try to, and they would like to interview all minors. It doesn't always happen. Any minor that's 13 or younger, according to the MOU, must be interviewed by them, so we do. The interviews are recorded, and we're provided a copy right away, but these interviewers are specially trained. It works out very well. We try to use that a lot. We have the ability to opt out for anybody over the age of 14, but it has to be a pretty good reason, not just that they don't want to do it. Many times we have an investigation that's active. It happens during the middle of the night. We can't wait. Although I will point out that PCA will, within about 2 hours' notice, provide a forensic examiner for us. We have done that at times. But sometimes we'll opt out for a lot of different various reasons, and we'll conduct the interview ourselves. The SARC unit, Philadelphia Sexual Assault Response Center. It used to be that years ago, if you were a victim of sexual assault, you were an adult or juvenile, adults were taken to Jefferson Hospital. They had to wait there with everybody else. Unless you had some serious injuries, you were going to wait. You were going to wait for them to do a sexual assault kit. That's changed since we've co-located where we're at now. SARC is run by Drexel University. They have sexual assault nurse examiners that are available there, and they're all called. They can be there within 1 hour. Victims of sexual assaults are brought right to us. They're not bounced all around the city, and the exam is conducted there by a SANE nurse. The sexual assault kit basically consists of a lot of envelopes with, I think of the name of it, swab sticks. And based off the interview, they use these to gather DNA evidence that may possibly be there or biological evidence. The sexual assault kits are then turned over to the custody of the police, and we in turn take them down to the lab for analysis in hopes of gaining any DNA evidence from what's recovered from them. Let me quickly give you a breakdown of special victims, how we're broken down. First, we have line operations. That's officers that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year long. Anything that gets brought in, sexual assaults, some child abuse, are handled by them. If my child abuse unit is not available, the line squad investigators will handle those. That's, like I said, divided up into 3 platoons, 8 to 4, 4 to 12, and midnight to 8. And there's also SIU, or Special Investigations. Special Investigations work Monday to Friday, 8 to 10 p.m. at night. I have them broken down into 2 different platoons that are always available, and they handle sexual violence and child abuse also. Some of the things that they do handle are identify patterns, what to follow us on. They'll handle cold cases. A lot of our code, we get CODIS hits from years ago, and they follow up on all those to see if they could produce any leads on those. They also handle child pornography, extraditions, any high-profile incidents, crimes against the elderly, and as I said now, human trafficking, or any case that needs to be followed up on. My child abuse unit, I have 11 investigators assigned to that unit. There's a lot of investigators when you look at 50 in the unit, but it's needed. The child abuse unit is available Monday to Friday during the day and at night. They handle all child abuse of a sexual nature. Is assigned to them, officers right there. And as I said, the children are interviewed with PCA, and the interviews are done. Regular child abuse, I hate to say regular, but if it's just of a physical nature, they're assigned to line squad personnel to follow up on in conjunction with Department of Human Services. Megan's Law, I have a Megan's Law unit. I have 3 investigators assigned to that. What they basically do is the state police will notify us when we have a Megan's Law violator, somebody who's no longer living, they said they were supposed to be living. They notify us, the investigation's on us. These investigators go out, they'll do neighborhood interviews to determine if they're still there or not. And if they're not, they'll obtain an arrest warrant for them and put it in the system. They also do Megan's Law compliance checks. We'll go out there, we'll notify the neighborhood that there's a Megan's Law violator that's just moved into the neighborhood. So that's a full-time job. I'll be very honest with you, I was very surprised by the volume of Megan's Law violators we get. So that is a full-time job. We also have a long-term missing persons unit. I have to qualify this a little bit. For years, special victims handle long-term missing persons. Long-term missing persons is somebody that's been missing for 30 days or more that they can't find. The divisions at that point have the option to forward the case to they used to Special Victims Unit, and that unit would follow up on it. That ceased several years ago. We kept the long-term missing person cases that we had. We continue to work on those. But at this point in time, any new ones, the divisional detectives are responsible for those long-term missing persons investigations. Okay. Real quick, we have something that's called an annual case review, which I think is very important to talk about. I'm told it's cutting edge. I know it is because I've been contacted from people, agencies all around the country to ask us all about how that works. Here's how it works. Once a year, and the new one is coming up, it's scheduled for September, we have representatives from the Women's Law Project, University of Pennsylvania Women's Center, Women Organizing Against Rape, Philadelphia Children's Alliance, and other groups who come out and review our case files. They have unrestricted access to our case files. What they generally review is all unfounded rapes and investigations that we term as medical investigations. What a medical investigation is when someone, most times when they're intoxicated, they have no idea what happened to them. They may find themselves at home and their clothing is off. They don't remember how that happened. Sometimes their clothing is put on backwards or inside out, and they believe that they were sexually assaulted. They have no recollection of it at all. Sometimes they believe that somebody put something in their drink, and they have no idea. But when that happens, they're classified, because we have no evidence that something happened, they're classified as a medical investigation. They're interviewed, a rape kit is done at the SARC unit, and it is submitted. If it comes back positive for the presence of any biological fluids, at that point it's safe to assume that something happened to them, and we can change the coding to a rape investigation and conduct a rape investigation on those. But I think that's very important because it basically provides transparency to our files. Like I said, they come in once a year and they look at those, and it's, as they explained to me, it's not a gotcha moment. It's not that they're trying to point out what we're doing wrong. It's to improve what we're doing there, and we actually view it that way. It works out very well. It really does. They'll go through, they'll pull a certain amount of cases, they pull all the unfoundeds and all the medical evaluations, but they also take a random sampling of other jobs that they choose. And then they'll review them all over a week's period. They'll make their notes. They'll look for patterns. a lot of times in interviews, they want to see if somebody's doing an interview of a complainant or whether it looks like an interrogation. They'll point them out to us. If they see they have one investigator that maybe consistently looks like an interrogation, they'll point it out to us for us to address. And other maybe inadequacies in our investigation. But I think that's very important because that does establish a level of transparency, which I think is very good. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions of the captain?
Captain, I just have one. The divisions all have victim services organizations in them. Do you have any kind of civilian victim assistance or service agencies that work with you?
It's funny you should ask that, because somebody just asked me the other day in the unit. No, I'm not aware of, like, they have a victim assistance officer to follow with the complainants. No, we don't have any. But all the detectives and investigators are supposed to follow up. That's something I've been checking for. Because I know sometimes the complaint you'll hear, I've seen through the files that people will say, nobody ever called, nobody ever followed up. But what I want to put in place is that all the investigators, and it's documented, that they follow up with their complainants and they at least let them know the determination of their job. Or if there's, especially if there's an arrest, they need to know that.
Thank you.
Captain, is it possible I can speak to you afterwards?
Sure.
Actually, I have one quick question. Since you have so many various groups, you mentioned 50 detectives and over 6,000 cases annually. That's tremendous, right? That's about 120 or so cases per detective. Are there any particular groups, and of course within that, the amount of effort involved can vary tremendously. You mentioned Megan's Law Compliance as an example of something that's very intense. Are there particular groups or particular services that you've heard, not necessarily perceived, because it's only been a couple months, but have heard that these are the ones that are overburdened and at risk of ending up with a lot of bottlenecks or in more desperate need of additional resources than others?
So you're talking about the different divisions within my unit, you mean?
Yeah.
That might be stressed.
Yes.
But we're all stressed, I can tell you that. It's 50 investigators with 6,000 investigations.
Right.
I mean, that's a lot. It's difficult for me to complain because, I mean, it's difficult to have, resources are short everywhere. Everybody is,
Sure.
I get that. So we do the best we can, we try to prioritize the best we can. But no, I can't point out any one particular group within my unit that maybe needs more. As I said, when I got there, I looked behind every tree and under every rock. I was busy. I've been around a long time, so I know investigations. It's a little different for me with special victims.
Sure.
I have to retool for that. But I saw 11 investigators in child abuse, and I can tell you, they need 11 investigators here. They absolutely do. The volume of jobs that they're getting, it was an eye-opener for me. I was surprised at the volume of jobs that they get. So in order to take some of the stress off of them, we took the physical abuse allegations and gave it to line squad detectives, who also would rather not, they have all their own investigations too. But it's very important, not that it's any more important than the other ones, but they're very important that we get right on those. A lot of our physical abuse ones are what we call, they're physical abuse allegations against children. A lot of them are anonymous. They're what they call CY-104 reports. And what that is, through DHS, people will call and report that a child is being abused or a child is not being taken care of very well. There's a lot of allegations that are made. They can be difficult because they don't always leave their name. What I'm told is there seems to be a spike in those recently ever since Penn State investigation, and a lot of I'm a required reporter because of my job, a mandatory reporter because of my job. I also was a coach. I was a mandatory reporter. I also was a scout leader, mandatory reporter. A lot of people are my wife's a teacher, mandatory reporter. So a lot of people are very afraid not to report anything these days. So they're reporting on, so there's much more of a volume. Yes, and they worry me. I'll be honest with you. The child wants to worry me. They do. I mean, a lot can go wrong with them. So I'm trying to take steps to make sure that there's much less of a lag between the time it's reported and somebody is assigned to that job. There's a lot can happen between them. But the realities of life are, there's there's a lot of volume. There's a lot of volume. And we have a lot of jobs that are live jobs coming through the door. We're gonna get right on this. We're gonna get right on it. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. I agree. I would love to have a whole lot more investigators, but everybody's stretched pretty thin. So,
Great, thank you.
Brief question, Captain. When you bring officers into your unit from other parts of the department, can you give us a sense of what type of special training they might receive?
Yes, they don't receive any special formalized training.
Okay.
They do not?
They do not. In order to handle, in order to be assigned to special victims. We try to pair them with experienced investigators and supervisors who've been there for a long time, so that they can kind of bring them along and let them know what they need to know. But no, is there any formalized training? No. The detectives in the unit went through detective training, where they did get formal training. The investigators, that are police officers, did not. They did not. And I would love to see more formalized training. Yeah, it's especially. There's a reason why we're called special victims. You need sensitivity, you need empathy. You really do. You have to have that. You have to have some understanding, and that's something that needs to be ingrained in. So I agree with you that we need some, but no, you do not get any formal training.
Can I say something? I realized afterwards, remember Joe, you were at that thing when, was it Lieutenant with, he explained their founding of, their decision of unfounded based on policy. I can give his name, or you remember who I'm speaking of? I think it was Brian was with us. You sat there and he just explained.
The investigator assigned.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you afterwards. Do you want me to say his name?
No, we can talk there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yes, but I specifically asked him, how do detect, well, one, the rank, is it just, detectives, or, because I guess you said Officer Graham was, what, a patrol cop or whatever, and I'm hoping I was exception and not the rule, and I said, how do they decide? Is it like basically a lottery system? They carefully take their time, match and pair, it's very extensive, and I'm hoping, like I said, she's an exception of what happened. And he said, no, they take it very thorough, they match this and that. And I don't know if he was overstating. Now, this is back.
Well, in order to be transferred to the unit, you have to go through an interview process with the commanding officer who will accept you or not accept you. And I'll be honest, I know we've had some people that came in and they said, why do you want to come here? We don't like their answers. And some of them will say, well, we say, do you want to, have you taken the detective's test? To which they respond, no, I don't want to be detective. Well, then we don't want you in the unit if you don't want to be detective. So we'll try to screen them out. But we use investigators citywide for all our units to supplement.
Because my investigator, are they a special status above a police officer? Like I said, I'm not sure with the ranking. Like I guess
no, they're still a police officer, but they are investigators.
They're above a patrol officer. In other words, they're not.
I wouldn't say that they're above.
Well, not too much, but they're different.
They're placed
stature.
in capacity where they're doing investigations.
Okay, like they're specifically focused on.
As opposed to a patrol function, right? But we use them all over the place.
Okay,
we have officers
like
that are in our citywide vice unit. We have officers in narcotics. We have officers in accident investigation division. They're police officers, but they're acting as investigators.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Captain, I'm on the board of TCA, and I just wanted to tell you, we worked for many years for co-location, and I worked with your predecessor, Captain Darby, and it's just nice to see the facility now, and it's nice to see the co-location, and it's really nice to see how well it actually is working.
I have to tell you, it does. It's and I was at the syndication review. I was impressed by that. It does seem to work. We have a good rapport.
Very nice.
Instead of an adversarial relationship.
Yep.
And I go up there all the time, and the building, it's nice because you don't feel like you're in a police facility at all, no matter what part of it you're in.
Right.
And I've just been around a long time. I went to Frankfurt Castor, and it's an old school building that basically was condemned. And we used to be located up at the Frankfurt Arsenal. There was barbed wire on top, and we came through, and you couldn't see. It was pitch black. I couldn't imagine being a victim of being brought in there. So yeah, this is much.
Where is the location now?
300 East Hunting Park.
Park.
Whitaker Hunting Park.
It would be a good road trip if the commissioners want to see it. It's very, very interesting to see how, you know, the co-location is working.
Yeah, I'm sure we can arrange that if you want to take a tour.
Thank you, yeah.
It's impressive. I was impressed.
And that's not as comfortable as one could feel there. Like you said, it was a cohesive thing, it was all done in-house.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Whereas years ago, you went all over the city. Because it happened in Southwest Philly, they brought you up to Center City, you waited there for hours, and they brought you up, you know, to Frankfurt Arsenal, where we used to be located. So this has made it much, much better.
Great. Anything else, Sir Captain? Thank you for your time tonight. That was helpful to give us some understanding of the unit, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Cap. Thank you, appreciate it.
Oh, what an icon. I felt his shoes.
Yeah, John's a friend of mine.
I know well.
14 years. He still comes up. He still comes up. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, thank you. Phoebe, you have a report for us this evening?
Yes. Let me start with, I contacted Joe Rosenberger and Waltman because we had never heard anything on growth, the city's position. She said that we're going to hear from someone now in administration, someone other than her. So I will let you know when that occurs. I'll shoot an email around. I also asked her about the stop and frisk data. And she is now preparing an agreement similar to the agreement we signed to receive the police shooting records, similar to what the Public Defender's Office signed in order to have the stop and frisk data. And we will then have the same universe of documents. I don't think our document will be slightly different. We won't have to agree to indemnify, but otherwise it will be similar in terms of, you know, what can and cannot be shared. But we will have a larger universe of documents for Kelvin to take a look at and do the statistics or whatever else he wants to do with the documents.
So wait, they're going to be offering an
We
agreement?
will have, right, we will get the larger universe of documents, but we will also have to sign a similar type of agreement to what we did when we received the police shooting data. We are also going to have to sign a similar agreement in order to receive, which I had told you before, the arbitration decisions. But Cara Lahini, who had been working on that, had not prepared a draft, and it had been several months. So I followed up with Joe, and Joe has now agreed that she will probably do that on behalf of Cara, and we'll get both documents. And I believe that's going to occur over the summer and before the fall, at least based on our conversation. It should be relevant.
So this is for the documents to come. There was, I think, a little bit of a delay in the annual report because you were waiting for clarification on what you could release of what you've already received.
Right, right. And we haven't seen, since we did our initial report on arbitration cases in the last annual report, we haven't received any at all since then. So looking forward to that in particular.
And then Kelvin and I met, we're just working on some sort of in-house document policies, you know, for consistency and just for thoroughness. So, you know, in response to subpoenas, in response to right-to-know requests, in response to informal requests, depending on, you know, who they are from. And we're working on that right now, and we're also seeing what some of the other advisory commissions are doing vis-a-vis, you know, requests to them for documents. And then the other thing we did is, when complainants come in, they were formally given somewhat of a waiver form indicating that the documents that they produced at that time could also be shared with internal affairs. We've expanded that because the documents that are created as a result of the investigation might also be shared. So we're expanding the scope of that waiver, if you will, just so it's consistent with what actually can be shared, and people are aware of that when they come in. And then, as I say, we will hopefully have some kind of draft together in the next couple of months for sort of a document policy.
Great. That's great. Other questions of Bibi?
No, I kind of lost track of the entire Grove matter that
Yeah.
bubbled
I'm
up,
shocked.
bubbled up, and then we got caught in the glacial speed of the city again.
Right.
So,
When are we expecting a decision on that?
Oh, it won't be probably until the fall. I think that the amicus briefs went in like May or June. It'll take a few months for the court to decide.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I guess I should mention, somewhat related to Grove, we're expecting the RFP for the city's body cameras to come out sometime, I think, in the summer before the fall. So we'll see where that goes.
Seems like every police force has got body cameras now. I saw
And they're all
another-
paying very different amounts of money for storage too, which is pretty interesting. So the numbers are really all over the place. But I think I might have mentioned this last month, but if not, it bears mentioning. Both the feds and a number of states are considering creating data portals that would kind of change the landscape for the storage process. If, for example, Pennsylvania creates a data portal that would allow all the police departments to store all of their body camera footage in some giant state-sponsored cloud, that would clearly change the landscape for Taser, which is the only player in the game for the moment. Taser really has a huge advantage right now after they bought evidence.com, because like Philadelphia, other police departments use that to store their cloud data, to exchange information between various parts of the law enforcement system. So if a state, or in some instances the feds, are also considering creating some type of data portal to do this, and that would change the economics of storage in a very good way. So we would end up hopefully at a point where we could save more than 30 days of footage. Right now the city is firm on saving only 30 days of footage, aside from shootings and other critical incidents. And that's a little bit concerning.
I just saw, I think maybe today or yesterday, that another small police department developed body cams. Did you see that through in the paper?
Housing Authority.
Housing authority.
Oh, the housing
Thank
authority,
you.
okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else then on old business? New business? Public comment? Okay, I think at that point then we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. Until July 18th.
So July 18th, thank you.
And Calvin, you'll tell us if we're going out into the district.
Yes.